So we want to look at how do these differ from the parent function. The parent function is the simplest version. The parent function of a quadratic formula is the parabola y equals x squared. So how do each of these differ from y equals x squared? If we were to graph them in the graphing calculator, what would they do? Where would they go? So let's take a look at A. And I'm going to highlight A because A is very similar to a test question. What's going on in A? What does the plus 4 do? A horizontal translation left 4. What does the minus 1 do? Horizontal translation down 1. That's it. Okay, B. Yep. B is another very similar to the test. So what does the minus 3 do to this function? It moves the function of horizontal translation left 3. Or sorry, horizontal translation right 3. I wrote it down as right 3. I know, I just confused everyone in the whole wide world. Okay, C. The first thing is the negative. The negative is a vertical reflection. It makes the graph open down. The 1/2. You want to take a guess with the 1/2? It makes it wider. It is a vertical shrink and makes the graph wider. Vertical reflection opens down. Okay, D. I will tell you right now, I will put D in your notes. I will not put D on a test or a quiz. Here's what's going on with D. The 2 inside the parentheses is a horizontal, and it's actually a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/2. With horizontal stretches and shrinks inside the parentheses, it's the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2, and that would make it a shrink. So this is a vertical shrink by a factor of 1/2. Again, I would not put that on the test. However, the plus 1 you should be able to do. What does this plus 1 represent? Up 1. E is another one that I would not put on the test. However, you can do the negative part on your own. What does that negative indicate? Yep. It's a vertical reflection, which makes the graph open down. Because 1/3 is inside the parentheses, it's a horizontal stretch or shrink. So we have to think about the reciprocal. What is the reciprocal of 1/3? The reciprocal of 1/3 is 3, so that makes it a horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. I would not put the horizontal stretches and shrinks or the horizontal reflections on the quiz or test because that's just mean. F is very, very similar to a problem I might give you on a test or a quiz. So try F on your own. All right, the negative is a vertical reflection, which makes the graph open down. So it would be like a hill shape instead of a U shape. The plus 3 would move the graph left 3. That's a horizontal translation, left 3. The plus 2 is a vertical translation, up 2. These are really, really good multiple choice questions on tests. I give you the problem and then I ask you which of the multiple choice answers describes the transformation. So keep that in mind when we get close to the next test, that these are very likely multiple choice questions. Okay, turn the page. We have a few more to do. At the top of the page, it shows you the formula for quadratic functions again. A indicates the reflection in the x-axis. When they say in the x-axis, they mean over the x-axis. And if you reflect something over the x-axis, that is a vertical reflection. So the A controls vertical reflections. It also controls stretches and shrinks. The H indicates horizontal translations, and the K indicates a vertical translation. What we're going to do is they're going to give us a function and then describe a transformation, and we have to write the equation that represents that transformation. Our new equation is going to be called G. So I'm going to write G of x equals, and I'm starting with x squared, so I'm going to space this out with a big set of parentheses so I have room to put some of those transformations into this skeleton. So x squared is our skeleton. That's what we're starting with. And now we're going to add stuff into it based on what they describe. Their first description is a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. Vertical is normal, and it happens outside of the parentheses. So outside of the parentheses, we need a 2. Anything vertical is absolutely normal, and it's outside of the parentheses. Horizontal is wonky, and it's inside the parentheses. Okay? Next, it says a translation 3 units down. That's a vertical translation, so it happens outside. So minus 3 outside. So our final answer is G of x equals 2 parentheses x squared minus 3. Do you notice that there's nothing in the parentheses but the x? If the only thing in the parentheses is the x, you don't need the parentheses. If you leave the parentheses there, I will not count it wrong. But if x is the only thing in the parentheses, you don't need the parentheses. Okay, let's try the next one. Again, I'm going to start by spacing it out. Our original function is x squared, so I'm going to space it out with parentheses. Okay, do you see how big I make the parentheses with space in front of the x and space after the x? So if there happens to be like a horizontal whatever, we can stick it in there. If there's a horizontal translation, we have space to put it in there. The first thing they describe is a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/3. This time it's horizontal, so we have to do the reciprocal and put it inside. So the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3, and we put it inside the parentheses. A reflection in the y-axis. Now this is confusing language. In the y-axis means over the y-axis. So this is the y-axis. If we're reflecting over the y-axis, that is a horizontal reflection. Horizontal reflections happen, oh my gosh, computer. Horizontal reflections happen inside, so that negative is going to go inside with the 3. Followed by a translation 2 units up. That would be outside, so we would do plus 2. Our final function is parentheses negative 3x, close your parentheses squared, plus 2. And here the parentheses really matter, because the parentheses are telling us that we need to take whatever number we're plugging into x times negative 3 before we square it. If the parentheses weren't there, you would square it first, then multiply it by negative 3, and that's not what this problem is intending. Okay, C. This one's a little different because we're starting with a function that's already had a transformation done to it. So write G of x equals, and then space it out exactly like we did before, and include the minus 5. It already had minus 5 done to it. And now we're going to do more. The first thing we're going to do Sorry, it's jumping around all day today. Is translate 3 units right? Horizontal is inside the parentheses and it's backwards. So 3 units right would be minus 3. 2 units up. After everything, we would do plus 2. You can combine like terms. So think about it. This function was originally shifted down 5. Now we're shifting it up 2. So how many down would it be shifted from the origin? 3. And that would be negative 5 plus 2. So our final function here is g of x equals parentheses x minus 3 squared minus 3. And D, we're just not going to do D.